I hugged a complete stranger at the Harrington Charity Gala on a Saturday in November, and in doing so, I accidentally declared war on a man I'd spent 6 months running from, pledged myself to a man I didn't know existed, and set fire to a life I had only just started rebuilding. And I did it all in approximately 4 seconds, with champagne on my breath and sheer animal panic in my veins, because my ex-boyfriend had just walked into the ballroom and I needed the nearest male body to hide behind. The nearest male body happened to be 6'4", 240 pounds of pure, terrifying muscle, wearing a bespoke black suit that cost more than my catering van, and looking out over the crowd with a pair of ice blue eyes that would haunt my dreams for the rest of my natural life. But I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was, Victor is here. Victor is walking toward me. Victor has that look on his face, the one that means he's about to make a scene, the one that means you belong to me and everyone in this room is about to know it. So I did the only thing my panicking, champagne-fuzzy, fight-or-flight brain could come up with. I grabbed the tallest man within arm's reach, and I hugged him. Not a polite greeting, not a friendly embrace. I seized this absolute mountain of a human being by the lapels of his suit, threw my arms around his waist, buried my face in his chest with the desperate strength of a woman who has run out of every other option, and I held on like he was the anchor in a crashing storm. He felt like solid granite and smelled of whiskey and winter and something expensive. His entire body went rigid with shock for exactly 1.5 seconds, and then his massive arms came up, settled around the curve of my waist and shoulders like they had been designed to rest there, and he hugged me back. He hugged me, not politely, not out of confusion. He wrapped his arms around me with the slow, deliberate intensity of a man who has decided, in the space between heartbeats, that whatever is happening is something he intends to be in charge of. When I pulled away, breathless, terrified, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth, the entire ballroom had gone silent. 300 people, crystal chandeliers, a 12-piece orchestra that had stopped mid-waltz. Every single person in that room was staring at the plus-size caterer who had just seized the most dangerous man in the city and clung to him like her life depended on it. Which, in a way, it had. The man I had hugged looked down at me with his ice-blue eyes. He looked at me, not at the room, not at the 300 horrified guests, not at my ex who was frozen mid-stride 15 feet away, and his mouth curves into a slow, devastatingly calm smile that made my nervous system simultaneously shut down and light on fire. "Well," he said, in a voice that was deep, accented, Russian, underneath something refined, and so quiet that only I could hear it. That was unexpected. "I am so sorry," I whispered, my hands still gripping his lapels because my fingers had apparently forgotten how to let go. My ex. He was coming and I panicked and you were the closest. I'm the caterer. I'm not even supposed to be out here. I make the desserts. Breathe, he said. I breathed. The man in the gray suit, Constantine said, without looking away from my face, walking toward us, stopped now, expensive watch, angry eyes. "How did you—" "Because he's the only person in this room who looked at you like you were something he owned, and you hugged me like a woman trying to hide from a predator." His ice-blue eyes held mine. "Is he going to be a problem?" No. He was. I left him 6 months ago. He doesn't accept it. Not a question. A reading. The most precise, devastating reading of my entire situation, delivered by a stranger whose arms still held me like a shield. "He's been following me," I heard myself say, and I don't know why I told him the truth. Maybe because his hand was still on my waist, and it was the first time in 6 months anyone had touched me without making me flinch. Something changed in his ice-blue eyes, something cold and ancient and very, very focused, like a predator that has just identified prey. "Then let's give him something to think about," Constantine said, and, without asking, without warning, he slid his hand from my waist to the small of my back, pulled me flush against his chest, and buried his face in my hair, holding me closer, fiercer. This time, he was in charge, and this time, it was not a rescue, it was a claim. When he released me, Victor Crane had turned on his heel and walked out of the ballroom. I found out who I had hugged approximately 90 seconds later, when a woman in a headset, the event coordinator, grabbed my arm in the kitchen corridor and looked at me with an expression that combined awe, terror, and the specific, wide-eyed bewilderment of someone who has just watched a house cat bite a lion. "Do you know who that was?" she hissed. "A very tall man with nice shoulders?" I offered weakly. "That was Konstantin Zakharov. Don? Konstantin Zakharov. He runs. He is. Do you not read the news? He's the head of the Zakharov syndicate. He controls half the shipping in this city. He is quite literally the most dangerous man at this gala, possibly in this hemisphere, and you just threw your arms around his waist in front of 300 people." The room tilted. I replayed the last 4 minutes. The suit, the shoulders, the way every single person in the ballroom had frozen, the way Victor, who was afraid of nothing and no one, had turned and walked away. I had not hugged a kind stranger. I had hugged a mafia boss, the most ruthless, feared, notoriously private mafia boss in the city. In front of everyone. "I need to leave," I said. "I need to leave right now. I need to go home and change my name, and possibly my continent." "He's asking for you," the coordinator said. He told his man to find the woman in the chef's coat who embraced me. His exact words were, "Find out everything about her. Start with her name. My name is Nadia Torres. I'm 34 years old. I am plus size, wide hips, full thighs, soft stomach, round face with dimples that I have been told by exactly one person in my life are the best part. I am a pastry chef and the sole owner-operator of Torres Catering, a company that consists of me, my van, and my hands. I am very, very good at what I do. My tres leches cake has made grown men cry. My chocolate ganache tart was once described by a food critic as an argument against everything that is wrong with the world. I can pipe a perfect rosette with my eyes closed, and I can make a croquembouche under pressure that would make a French pastry chef weep with envy. I am also a woman who spent 3 years being slowly, systematically reduced by a man who told me he loved me while shrinking the world around me until I could barely breathe. Victor Crane, 40 years old, wealthy, connected, the kind of handsome that photographs well and hides everything. He found me when I was catering a corporate event, the cute, fat chef with the incredible desserts, and he decided he wanted me the way men like Victor want things, completely, exclusively, possessively. The first year was heaven. He told me my body was beautiful. He funded my business expansion. He introduced me to his world, galas, galleries, the kind of rooms where a plus-size woman in a chef's coat is either invisible or a punchline. The second year, the cage started showing. He monitored my phone. He criticized my clients. He told me my recipes were cute, but not serious. He told me I was lucky to have him, that a woman my size should be grateful for the attention. He never hit me. Victor was too smart for marks. He used words the way a surgeon uses a scalpel, precise, clinical, devastating. The third year, I left. Packed my knives at 3 a.m., drove my van to my mother's garage, and started rebuilding Torres Catering from nothing. 6 months later, Victor still hadn't accepted it. He showed up at my events. He called from new numbers. He sent flowers, beautiful, expensive, with notes that read like love letters and felt like threats. "I'm waiting, Nadia. You'll come back. Where else would you go?" And then he showed up at the Harrington Gala, where I was catering the dessert table, and walked toward me with that look, the ownership look, the "you are mine and everyone will know it" look, and my body made a decision before my brain could stop it. I hugged the nearest stranger. The nearest stranger happened to be a Mafia boss. Konstantin Zakharov walked into my kitchen. Not the ballroom, not the corridor. The temporary station I'd set up for the gala, with my piping bags and my ganache and my perfectly tempered chocolate and my portable oven. He walked past 2 of his own security men, past the event coordinator who looked like she was about to faint, and he stood in my workspace, 6'4", 240 pounds, shoulders so broad he had to angle himself through the doorway, and he looked at my dessert spread. "You made these," he said, not a question. Yes, I'm the caterer. Torres Catering. I do the desserts." He picked up one of my chocolate truffles. He examined it the way a man who understands craftsmanship examines a thing made with care. Then he ate it. He closed his eyes. He chewed slowly. "This is exceptional," he said, opening his eyes. "The ganache is perfect." "Thank you," I said, because what do you say when a Mafia boss compliments your ganache? "Now," he set the truffle down. "Tell me about the man in the gray suit." "Mr. Zakharov." Konstantin. "Konstantin. I am so sorry about what I did out there was completely. I was panicking, and you were the closest person, and You hugged me to make a man believe you were protected," he said calmly. "I understood that approximately half a second in, I hugged you back because I wanted to. Those are different things." He leaned against my counter, carefully, respectfully, giving me space. "Now, the man in the gray suit, Victor Crane. I know who he is. Businessman, real estate, political connections, reputation for acquiring things." His ice blue eyes found mine. "What I want to know is what he did to make a woman brave enough to hug a stranger in a room full of 300 people too afraid to do the same." My throat tightened. "Why do you care?" "Because I was standing in that ballroom for 2 hours and no one approached me. No one spoke to me. No one so much as made eye contact. Because every person in that room knows what I am, and they're all terrified. And then a woman in a chef's coat with chocolate on her fingers grabbed me and held on to me like I was the safest thing she'd ever found." The corner of his mouth lifted. "That kind of bravery deserves to be protected. At minimum, it deserves a conversation," I told him. "Not everything. I couldn't, but enough. The 3 years, the control, the monitoring, the phone calls that wouldn't stop, the flowers." Konstantin listened with the terrifying, focused stillness of a man cataloging information he intends to act on. When I finished, he said, "I'm going to give you my number. If Victor Crane contacts you, approaches you, or so much as sends you a flower, call me." "I don't need a protector," I said quickly. "I've been handling this myself for 6 months. I'm not some helpless—" "I know exactly what you are," he said. "You're a woman who hugged a Mafia boss rather than let a man control her. That is not helplessness. That is the opposite of helplessness." He placed a card on my counter. "The number is for your convenience, not my ego. Use it if you choose. Don't if you choose. The choice is the whole point." He left. He took a box of my truffles. He left €300 on the counter. 3 days later, Victor sent me flowers. Not the usual arrangement. 200 red roses, filling the entire front of my catering kitchen, blocking the door, overwhelming the workspace with their cloying, suffocating sweetness. The card read, "You looked beautiful at the gala, Nadia. Who was the man? He won't last. Nobody does. You always come back to me." I called Constantine's number. He answered on the first ring. "The flowers," I said. "How many?" 200. A pause. The specific, weighted silence of a very dangerous man doing mathematics. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. "Don't touch them. Some men put things in flowers." He arrived in 18 minutes, with 2 men. They swept my kitchen, and they found it. A GPS tracker, embedded in the base of the largest vase. Victor hadn't just sent flowers, he'd sent a surveillance device. He was tracking my location, my movements, the address of my kitchen that I had kept private for 6 months. Constantine held the tracker between his thumb and forefinger, studying it the way a man studies an insect he's deciding whether to crush. "This is not a gift," he said quietly. "This is a collar." "I should go to the police," I said, though we both knew the answer to that. Victor Crane donates to the Police Benevolent Fund. He golfs with the chief. He has 3 judges on speed dial. Constantine set the tracker down on my counter. "You can go to the police, and I will support you completely. Or you can allow me to communicate to Mr. Crane, in a language he will understand, that you are no longer available for surveillance." His ice blue eyes were steady. "I'm not offering to own you, Nadia. I'm offering to stand next to you while you take your life back. There's a difference." "Why?" I asked. "We met 4 days ago. I hugged you without permission. You owe me nothing." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I was married once. When I was 26, she was small and kind, and she didn't know what I was when she fell in love with me, and when she found out, she was too afraid to leave. Not of me, of the world around me, of the men who might use her to get to me." His jaw tightened. "She died in a car accident 3 years later. An accident that I have never been fully convinced was an accident, and I have spent every day since understanding that the most dangerous thing a powerful man can do is fail to protect the person standing next to him." He picked up the tracker. He crushed it in his fist. "I will not fail again," he said simply. Victor escalated. Of course he did. Men like Victor don't retreat, they recalibrate. 2 weeks after the flower incident, I was catering a children's hospital fundraiser, my biggest client, the one that kept Torres Catering alive, and Victor showed up, not as a guest, as a donor. He'd written a check large enough to put his name on the program, which meant he was untouchable, which meant the event organizers couldn't remove him, which meant I was trapped in a kitchen 30 feet from a man who had planted a GPS tracker in my roses. He came to find me during the dessert service. He stood in the doorway of my station, blocking it, the way he always blocked doorways, making his body the perimeter of my world. "Hello, Nadia," he said, smiling the smile that used to make me feel special and now made my stomach turn. "I see you're still playing Caterer. It's cute." He looked at my body, slowly, deliberately, the way he looked at things he was appraising. "You've gained weight. Stress eating? You know I always said you'd look better if you—" "She looks extraordinary," said a voice behind him. "Step aside." Victor turned and looked up and up. Konstantin Zakharov stood in the corridor like a wall that had learned to wear a suit. His shoulders were so broad they created their own architecture. His ice-blue eyes looked down at Victor Crane with the same flat, dispassionate focus a wolf gives a rabbit. Not hate, not anger, just the calm assessment of a predator evaluating whether the thing in front of it is worth the energy of killing. Zakharov, Victor said, recovering quickly. Victor was good at recovering. I didn't realize you were… Are you here with the caterer? A laugh, designed to diminish. That's sweet, though I'd have thought you could do better than… Finish that sentence, Constantine said pleasantly, and it will be the last sentence you finish with your original teeth. The corridor went very quiet. Nadia Torres is under my personal protection, Constantine continued, his voice never rising above conversational. Her business, her kitchen, her person, untouched. If you contact her, approach her, send her flowers, follow her van, or speak her name in any room I might hear about, and I hear about most rooms, I will take it personally, and I handle personal matters with a thoroughness that men like you, Victor, cannot afford. Victor looked at me, looking for the flinch, the apology, the please don't make a scene. I didn't flinch. I picked up my piping bag and went back to work. Victor didn't come himself after that. He didn't need to. He used the weapon he always used, systems. Within a week, a health inspector showed up at my kitchen, unannounced, with a clipboard full of violations I had never committed and a dead-eyed expression that told me this visit had been arranged by someone with connections. They shut me down. 48 hours. Pending investigation. Then my van was towed, parking violation, on a street where I'd parked every day for 6 months without a ticket. Then my biggest client, the Children's Hospital, received an anonymous complaint about food safety concerns from Torres Catering and suspended my contract. Victor was dismantling my life, piece by piece, systematically, the way he always did, not with fists, but with phone calls, not with violence, but with the quiet, invisible destruction of everything I'd built. I sat on the curb outside my closed kitchen at midnight, with no van, no contract, and no way to make next month's rent, and I understood with terrible clarity that Victor Crane had never needed to touch me. He just needed to touch everything I'd built and watch me collapse without it. I called Constantine. My hands were shaking. I wasn't crying. I was too angry to cry. He's destroying my business, I said. Health inspector. Towing. My biggest client. He's taking it all apart, and he's not even getting his hands dirty. Silence. The heavy, focused silence of a man doing calculations. How much do you need to survive the next month? He asked. I'm not taking your money, Constantine. I didn't call you for money. I know. You called me because you're angry and you need someone who understands how men like Victor Crane operate, so let me tell you what I understand. His voice was calm, precise, and absolutely deadly. Victor Crane is using institutional power to destroy a civilian business because a woman rejected him. This is not a personal dispute anymore. This is a man weaponizing public systems against a private citizen. And that, in my world, is the kind of overreach that gets addressed. Constantine did not touch Victor Crane. He didn't need to. He did something far worse. He used Victor's own weapons against him. Within 72 hours, the health inspection was reviewed by a second inspector, a legitimate one, who found 0 violations and filed a formal complaint against the original inspector for irregularities consistent with external influence. My kitchen reopened. My van was released. The towing company received a visit from a law firm that explained, in exquisite detail, the legal consequences of fraudulent towing. My hospital contract was reinstated, with a personal apology from the director, who had received documentation showing that the anonymous complaint had been traced to a phone registered to Crane Real Estate Holdings. And then the real reckoning began. Constantine's lawyers, a firm so expensive their letterhead probably costs more than my van, filed a coordinated series of complaints, investigations, and legal challenges against Victor Crane's real estate empire. Building code violations, tax irregularities, contract fraud. The kind of forensic financial dismantling that doesn't leave bruises but leaves nothing standing. Within 6 weeks, Victor Crane's development license was suspended. His political friends stopped returning his calls. His investors pulled out. The empire he'd built on connections and intimidation crumbled the moment someone with bigger connections and no fear of intimidation decided to push back. Victor called me. One last time. "Call him off," he said, and his voice, for the first time in 4 years, had something in it I'd never heard before. Fear. "Whatever you want, I'll leave you alone. Just call him off." "I didn't call him on, Victor," I said. "I hugged a stranger at a gala because you wouldn't stop following me. Everything that's happening to you right now is the consequence of your own choices. I didn't need a mafia boss to destroy you. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided that a woman who left you was something you could take back by force." I hung up. I went back to my kitchen. I piped a perfect rosette on a tres leches cake, and I didn't think about Victor Crane again. 3 months after the gala, the night Constantine earned the thing I hadn't been ready to give him, he had been coming to my kitchen. Not to protect me. Victor was gone, exiled to a city where his name meant nothing, but to sit on a stool in the corner, eat my desserts, and talk to me while I worked. The most feared man in the city, sitting on a metal stool in a tiny catering kitchen, eating chocolate truffles and asking me about butter temperatures. He never decided things for me. When I needed help, a new client, a kitchen repair, a van that wouldn't start, he offered, and I accepted or refused, and he respected both with the same steady patience. He didn't comment on my body the way Victor had, as a flaw to be managed, a problem to be minimized. Constantine looked at my plus-size body the way he'd looked at my chocolate truffle, with genuine, focused appreciation, like it was exceptional work. One night, I was elbow-deep in ganache. He was on his stool. I turned to reach a mold and found him standing. When had he stood? Directly behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his massive body. "You have chocolate on your face," he said softly. "I always have chocolate on my face." "I know." He lifted his hand, slowly, giving me every chance to step away, and his thumb brushed the chocolate from my cheekbone with a gentleness so devastating from a man that large that my knees actually went weak. "It's my favorite thing about you." "The chocolate?" "The evidence that you've been making beautiful things with your hands." His ice blue eyes held mine. "Can I hold you, Nadia?" "You've already held me," I pointed out. "Twice." "No, you hugged me once in a panic. I pulled you close once, to protect you. Neither of those was real." His thumb was still on my cheekbone. "I'd like a real one, if you'll have it." I hugged him, not in panic, not because Victor was watching, not because I needed to be saved. I stepped into his massive arms and held him, because a man who could crush concrete with his hands had just asked permission to hold me, and that, after 3 years of a man who never asked permission for anything, was the most romantic thing that had ever happened to me. I pulled away slowly, keeping my hands on his chest, because I am a woman who learned the hard way that affection from powerful men comes with conditions. "If this is going to be something," I said, "I need you to hear my terms." He didn't flinch. He gave me space, but kept one arm lightly around my waist. "Tell me." "Torres Catering stays mine. My business, my decisions, my clients. You don't fund it. You don't improve it. You don't quietly arrange things behind my back to make my life easier. I built this from a van and a recipe box, and I will not owe my success to a man. Any man." "Understood. I am not a secret. I am not a mistress. I am not tucked away somewhere safe while you live your life. If I'm with you, I'm with you, in the open, where the world can see, and the world includes the parts of your world that will look at a plus-size caterer and wonder what a man like you is doing with a woman like me. Let them wonder, he said, and something fierce moved behind his ice-blue eyes. And the fear, you make a decision about my life without asking me first? We're done. I don't care if it's for my safety, my comfort, or my own good. I spent 3 years with a man who decided things for my own good, and I will die alone before I let another man do it. Konstantin Zakharov, who runs a syndicate, who commands men, who has never in his life been told no by anyone who wasn't prepared to die for the privilege, looked at me with something I can only describe as admiration. Those are good terms, he said. They're non-negotiable. I know. That's why they're good. He paused. Can I add one? Try me. Once a week, you make me the chocolate truffles. Not as the caterer, as the woman I'm courting. I'll pay full price. I laughed. For the first time in months, real, full, from the belly, the kind of laugh that makes my dimples appear and my whole body shake. Full price plus tip, I said. Done. 6 months later, Torres Catering is the most sought-after dessert company in the city. Not because a mafia boss made some calls, because a plus-size woman with chocolate on her fingers makes the best ganache in the hemisphere, and word got around the old-fashioned way, through people's mouths. I have a waiting list. I have a new kitchen, one I paid for myself, with my own money, from my own clients. The van has been replaced with a better van. My name is on the door, the same way my hands are in the dough, and every bite of every dessert that leaves my kitchen carries the specific, irreplaceable signature of a woman who rebuilt her life from flour and sugar and sheer, stubborn refusal to be diminished. Konstantin comes to my kitchen every Tuesday. He sits on the stool. He eats the truffles. He pays full price plus tip. He asks me about my day, and he listens to the answer, and he never once suggests that my day would be better if it included his money, his influence, or his decisions. He has never commented on my body with anything other than reverence. He holds my wide hips like they are the framework of something sacred. He traces the curve of my waist with the focused precision of a man who has spent his life building empires and has finally found the one thing more impressive than an empire, a woman who built her own from scratch, twice, and didn't need him for any of it. You are the bravest person I've ever met, he told me last Tuesday. Chocolate on his thumb. I hugged a stranger at a gala because I was panicking, I said. That's not bravery. That's fight or flight with bad aim. No, he said, his ice-blue eyes soft in a way that 300 people at the Harrington Gala would never believe. The hug was panic. Everything after, leaving Victor, rebuilding your business, refusing to be diminished, setting your terms with a man who terrifies everyone else, that was bravery. The hug was 4 seconds. The bravery has been your whole life. Victor Crane relocated to another state. His real estate empire is a shell. His political friends discovered, as political friends always do, that loyalty is conditional and proximity to scandal is expensive. He will never contact me again, not because of Konstantin, but because the woman he tried to destroy turned out to be the only person in his life who was ever worth keeping, and he lost her because he couldn't tell the difference between love and ownership. I am 35 years old. I am plus size. I own a catering company. And the most dangerous man in the city sits on a metal stool in my kitchen every Tuesday, eating my chocolate truffles, paying full price plus tip, and wrapping his massive arms around me at the door with the careful, reverent gentleness of a 6'4" wall of muscle who has learned that the strongest thing a powerful man can do is let a strong woman be powerful all by herself. The accidental hug that started everything? I'd do it again. Every time. 4 seconds of panic that led to the rest of my life. But the embraces now, the real ones, the Tuesday night ones, the flower on my cheek and chocolate on his thumb ones, those are not accidents. Those are choices, made freely, with my own hands, by a woman who will never again let anyone decide who she holds or why. If you accidentally hugged a mafia boss to escape your ex, and he turned out to be the only man who ever asked permission to hold you, who crushed a GPS tracker in his fist, who dismantled your stalker's empire without ever raising his hand, and who sits on a metal stool in your kitchen every Tuesday eating truffles at full price plus tip, stay in his world, or would you run, take the freedom you fought for, and refuse to trade one powerful man's orbit for another's? Comment stay or run.